Okay. Welcome, everybody. Welcome. Good afternoon. This fifth or so month of the pandemic, we're going to try to give you a little bit to smile about. And that's because we have Corley Kenna from Patagonia. She is the Director of Global Communications and Public Relations at Patagonia. And she's also one of the co-founders of the Time to Vote movement. We'll talk a lot about that later. Just to fill out her very impressive resume, she was a vice president of public affairs and corporate communications at a little brand called Ralph Lauren. She was a managing director at Burson Marsteller. And prior to all that, she worked for Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. Corley Kenna, welcome from California.
Thanks so much for having me.
Where exactly are you in California now? It looks wonderful. Your background looks great there.
It is really lovely here in Santa Barbara, California.
Okay, well, we're here in Washington, D.C., so we've got both sides of the country represented, and hopefully we have a lot of people in the middle of the country watching us too. So let's also remind everybody who's watching this live that we really want to hear your questions, your comments, and we'd be glad to send them right into Corley and have her answer them. So please type in your questions whenever you want. So Corley, let's begin. Tell us, you're at Patagonia now. That's a brand that just about everybody knows. By the way, no advertising going on here, but I bought one of their coats, one of your coats last winter, and I love it. So tell us, what do you do at Patagonia, and how, of course, importantly, has your job changed during the pandemic, if at all?
Well, thank you, and thanks again for having me on today. So my primary job at Patagonia is leading our earned communication efforts and strategy for the products that we sell, and thanks for being a customer. And that includes not just the products themselves, but how we build them, which we take a lot of care in how we build our products, both on the social side and the environmental side. So that's a big part, how we communicate what we're selling. Another big part of my job is focusing on and bringing attention to our culture at Patagonia. We think we have a lot of good lessons from our nearly 50 years of being in business, and especially around things like on-site childcare and benefits for new parents. And it's a really important part of our value system at Patagonia. So how we talk about that and how we share those lessons and outcomes from that is a really important part of my job and my team's. And then, of course, how we talk about environmental issues. Our mission at Patagonia is we're a business to save our home planet. And so we spend quite a bit of time thinking about how to elevate environmental issues, conservation issues, bring awareness to urgent threats facing our planet, and building coalitions so that we can have really effective and mobilized advocates for our planet. And then finally, and this has probably been what's changed the most since the COVID crisis, is internal communications. And of course, this was always a thing and always a part of our role within the company, but it is definitely increased in importance. And I will admit, I think everyone in our company would admit that we had not yet invested enough in internal communications. And with everyone working remotely, with this being a global crisis and wanting to learn from how our colleagues overseas were managing through it, all of that has really reinforced the importance of really solid and quality internal communications.
Corley, could you give me an idea, or give our audience an idea of the scale of your business? In other words, how many people are you communicating with? How big is the team that you work on?
Sure. So my team is pretty small, actually, and unlike many other companies, we just have one communications team. We sit within the marketing function, and there are 6 of us on the team. But our company is global. We have offices around the world, and we are, several thousand employees across the country. Our main in the U.S., our headquarters are in Ventura, California. So that's one, large employee population center. We have a distribution center in Reno. So that's the second large employee center, and then retail across the country, 20 states across the country.
So tell me, what things are you doing differently as a communicator now that you didn't do 5 months ago? And what of those things do you think may outlast this pandemic whenever it ends?
Yeah, I mean, practically speaking, and this is very obvious, we are working from home, and we're still working from home, and we'll be working from home for the foreseeable future. And unlike some of my other colleagues, for instance, on the design team, that where really being in the office is pretty fundamental and being able to touch and be with the team in person. Our team is different. I like to say we trade in Word documents, and we're really used to talking on the phone. So we've adjusted pretty well to working from home, but there's outcomes to this that weren't as obvious from the start. And, I think the importance of really regular touch bases, both with just our team, but then also our kind of main collaborators, and really going back, because you can't read the room the same way that when you're in person, just going back and making sure that the instruction was clear, that everybody's takeaways were the same. I'm sort of reminded of that on an almost daily basis, and following up with emails and things of that nature, and just that sort of fundamental principle that all of us were taught early on, that really over communicating is a good thing, and you can't go wrong if you stick to that principle. I think on a sort of more macro, bigger scale, one of the other lessons that we've learned through this crisis, and not just through the COVID crisis, the health crisis, the economic crisis, but also the social justice crisis that we're in, is this, that your employees and your community are your most important stakeholders. Mm-hmm. And addressing them about what's going on in a transparent and honest way is really fundamental and important to do before anything else. And I think that was something, you heard the Business Roundtable, I believe last year, start to talk about, right. Caring about community as much as profit, and thinking about that. This is something that, has been a part of our culture at Patagonia for many decades now. And part of being a responsible company is thinking about people and planet, not just profit. And I think these crises have reminded us that we need to be taking care of our own. And you can't resume business as usual until you take care of your own, and your employees will call you out for it. So you might get away with it for a minute, but I think your employees will call you out for it. And so it's really important to address that.
Now, just to get some of the housekeeping done here, are there particular tools that you're using? Are there any kind of tactics that you're using with communicators on your staff to keep the culture going, to maybe even check in on people? What tools are you using, for example? I would assume all the usual Slack and everything else.
Yeah, all of them, and we're sorting through that sort of physical infrastructure and figuring out which, and I hope that doesn't open me up to 80 million sales pitches on the various tools out there. We have them, trust me, we've been evaluating them. I think what's more important than the tools you use is being regular about it. I think people crave a schedule. in crisis, and they want to have something that they can count on for, to be that reliable source of information. And so it's that principle of over communicating, but then also communicating with regularity and at a time when people can expect it. I think the other piece of it is make sure you're not just talking at people. Try to find ways to facilitate two-way conversation, there are times for anonymous questions and tips, and I think that's really important. But just because we're not in an in-person town hall, people shouldn't feel empowered to ask mean-spirited questions just because they can be anonymous. And I think that's something that's important too. There's times for anonymous tips and questions, and then there's times where people should attach their name to questions and to ask them just as they would raise their hand in a town hall setting.
Now, Corley, as you mentioned, of course, and as we know, Patagonia is known not only for its products, but also for leading the way on social issues. As a communicator, do you consciously have to divide your day between communicating about your products and communicating about issues? How do you do all this?
No, and a lot of that is because there's someone on my team who manages the product side of our work, and he is very, very good at his job. But the two are often intertwined, and I'll give you an example. We are a part of something called the Regenerative Organic Association, and this is a group of companies leading a movement committed to regenerative organic agriculture. And regenerative organic agriculture is a lot of different benefits, but it is essentially like a holistic standard that looks at soil health, farm worker fairness, making sure farm workers are treated well, and animal welfare, making sure animals are not being treated inhumanely. And so this holistic standard has all kinds of benefits. And we are in the process of transitioning our organic cotton to regenerative organic cotton. And so there is both a product story with the t-shirts that will have this cotton, or other products that will have this, but then also a brand story with this could represent the future of farming. This could be part of the solution to how we look at climate change. I mean, agriculture, it turns out, is a significant contributor to the climate crisis. So we need to change how we grow food and fiber. And this is one of the ways that we're doing it at Patagonia.
Okay, great. I'd be remiss, I think, if I didn't at least ask about two rather large issues that have orbited around your brand in the past few months. And one was the announcement, kind of a sudden announcement, at least to members of the public, it seems, of your CEO's departure, Mrs. Macario, and then well before government regulations and state regulations said that you had to do this, Patagonia closed many of its retail outlets. Tell me what communicating those or communicating around those two events taught you.
Yeah. So I think they really show the importance of the communications function, and that we do have an ability to shape a story. And as communications professionals, we need to remember there are lots of different ways to share stories. And in this incredibly competitive media environment that is competitive on all the levels and incredibly crowded and incredibly fast moving, how you set the pace of your coverage is really important. We've really moved away from press releases on my team. I mean, occasionally there is a need for them, but by and large, what we're finding is working with reporters, building relationships, one-on-one relationships that are built on trust, that are built on mutual respect, is the best way to get a good story. And so with the COVID crisis and what the business decisions that we made around that early on, we're not a public company, so we don't have the same kind of requirements to share out what we're doing as a lot of public companies. And so we really thought through how were we going to talk about this decision to shut our doors, the fact that layoffs were probably inevitable, and all the other repercussions with this, going down to the fact that our brand is really built around having retail stores that serve as community hubs so that we can share information about local environmental issues, like what happens when our stores are closed and we can't do that. And so we thought it through. We thought we could do an op-ed, we could do a LinkedIn post, we could do a press release. Ultimately decided, which was risky, that we should work with one news outlet and one retail reporter, take the time, we chose the New York Times, take the time to work with the reporter, be very honest with what was going on, give a pretty good glimpse under the hood of the decision making and all of that. Make sure she had access to Rose, who was still at the helm at the time, and just answer the questions as transparently and honestly as we could. And so that's how we broke the news about what was going on with us. And there was risk in that. She could have covered it unfairly. I think she, at the end of the day, covered it very well. And she covered it well, not because it was a brilliant story for us, but because it was an honest story. And I think it demonstrated that that was driving our decision making was not profit. It was safety of our employees first, and then safety of our community. And we were going to take as long as it took to make sure that people were safe before they came back to work.
Great. And I mentioned at the top that you are a co-founder of the Time to Vote organization. Tell us about Time to Vote. As the elections are on our doorstep almost, and as I note, yesterday was a big day in terms of voting and the whole election process, because it was the 100th anniversary of the 19th Amendment, and I know we did an article on that on PRNEWS, and I think my colleague Nicole is showing that now, so you can find that and read that. But tell us about Time to Vote. Tell us what's going on with that, what it is, and then also tell us what Patagonia's role in elections are. And I know you have a film we're going to show a little bit of a trailer here, so a little bonus for us.
A little bonus, yeah. So first on Time to Vote. Time to Vote started in 2018 ahead of the midterm elections, and it was sort of born out of a blog post that our then CEO, Rose Marcario, wrote about a decision she made in 2016, which was to shut down our headquarters, our distribution center, and our retail stores, and give all U.S. employees the day off, give election day off, so that no worker would have to choose between earning a paycheck and voting. And she received such positive feedback. 2018 decided to do it again, wrote a piece on LinkedIn about that decision and inviting other companies to consider how they support their employees in voting. With that, very organically, we became the Time to Vote movement. I started hearing from lots of companies from across the country. By the midterm elections in 2018, we had 411 companies that were a part of our movement. We've restarted for this year. If you're not a member, go to maketimetovote.org and you can learn more about it and sign up there. The movement is free. It's nonpartisan. It's the only business-led movement in its space, meaning there's lots of nonprofits who work on these issues. They do great work. We work with them too, and they're wonderful. We're the only one that's just for the business community and led by the business community. And it's not prescriptive. So what works for us at Patagonia to shut down on election day shouldn't necessarily work for other companies. And we recognize that in Time to Vote. So for sure, it is sort of understanding. We want to make sure people get that it is about, making sure your employees have that work schedule that allows them to vote. But this year, there's a lot of other important things for people to recognize, like the importance of mail-in ballots and early voting. And so Time to Vote companies share, some of them offer election day as a day off, some do a few hours, some share resources for mail-in ballots, some do like a day without meetings. All of those are great ways to support your employees in voting.
Great. And tell us about this trailer that we're going to look at now. And I guess it's Patagonia's election strategy. It's called Public Trust, correct?
Correct. So separate from what we're doing with Time to Vote, we will have our own efforts to engage voters this fall. And because we are always striving to reach our mission statement and protect the planet, one of the ways we're doing that this fall is with this film, Public Trust. So we'll show a clip of that, and then I can talk a little bit about how we'll use it to engage voters.
Okay, Nicole?
We are spiritually and culturally connected to this land.
Just like the hair on your head. You pull one hair, you're not going to miss it.
In every generation, you will always face somebody who represents greed.
$150 trillion in general value locked up in federally controlled lands.
In the dust clouds rolling.
If the case can't be made to protect this place, how can we expect to protect anything?
People will say, oh, the public land belongs to all the people. Belongs to all the people. I'd like them to tell me which part is mine because I want to sell it. The preponderance of the evidence that I have discovered.
The mine is right in front of me. Gotcha.
There's an enormous, well-heeled movement to take lands away from the American people, to make vast sums of money for somebody and change our country forever.
Representatives of Utah have taken upon themselves to declare war upon us, the Native American tribes.
They'd drill in a cemetery if there was oil there.
Our public land is not for sale and it's not going anywhere.
Don Young does not represent the Gwich'in in our voice.
I represent
You might have no representative.
The largest rollback of federal land protection in U.S. history. They really only want houses.
You people are enemies, and we're gonna get your asses, and we know what you're up to, and we're coming for you.
There's a lot more people waking up now. We're taking a stand and we're taking back our home. So ready for the fight because we're not gonna give up.
This land that is ours together is a great land.
Joy, new chances, recreational. To preserve places like this, we must bring to our work a new spirit of respect and cooperation.
Without regard to party, to protect them for all of us and for our children.
These are our streets!
But what's at stake is this enormous common wealth, the American system of public lands. And I don't say we have the right to it. That's not it. You have the right to whatever you're willing to fight for.
This land was paid in.
Great. Wonderful looking trailer. They're gorgeous footage, Corley. I'm sure you're very proud of it.
Thank you. We're really excited about it. So that film will get released on September 25th, the day before National Public Lands Day, and about a month and change ahead of our elections. And hopefully you can see from that trailer that this is a film that really makes the case for why protecting wild places should be something we can all agree on. But there's never been more threats, and who is in charge in Washington plays an outsized role in this story. And the three areas that the film focuses on, Bears Ears National Monument, the Alaska National Wildlife Refuge, and the Boundary Waters, are all three in real jeopardy. And a new leader at the Department of Interior, and certainly a new president would help protect those places. So that will be a case that we are making to the voters this fall. And
this will be in theaters everywhere, as they say.
It will. So it'll be released digitally on the 25th, and I hope everyone will take a minute, take an hour or so to watch it and digest it as you consider who you're voting for this November.
Great. Corley Kenna from Patagonia, thank you so much for brightening our day. I just want to mention three quick items before we go. August 25th, PR News has a free webinar about AI and technology, and who doesn't want to know about that? And it is free. So look on our website. August 27th is the deadline for Top Women in PR Awards. Corley, I think you have an early lead there. And September 22nd and 23rd is our Social Shakeup Show, which will be a virtual event this year. Everybody, thank you so much from PR News here in Washington, D.C., in New York, and Corley, again, in California. Thank you and good afternoon, everybody.
Thank you.